On August 20th, 1968, a Soviet tank column simply ceased to exist, and nobody knows why. The invasion of Czechoslovakia was supposed to be airtight. Operation Vltava, the code name for the Soviet-led Warsaw-pact incursion into Prague, involved over 200,000 troops, 2,000 tanks, and coordinated strikes across multiple borders. It was August 1968. The Prague Spring had frightened Moscow. Alexander Dubček's reforms threatened the entire Eastern Bloc's grip on power. The Kremlin decided, crush it, fast, overwhelming, complete. But here's where it gets strange. We have to rewind about 6 hours. Early morning, August 21st, a secondary Soviet mechanized column, roughly 40 to 60 tanks, supported by armored personnel carriers and infantry, was routed through a specific corridor, south from Poland, cutting through the Moravian-Silesian region toward Ostrava. This wasn't the main thrust. This was a flanking maneuver. It had a job: secure industrial zones. Prevent Czech resistance from consolidating in the southeast. Radio operators at Soviet command posts monitored the column's progress. Check-in at 0430, position confirmed. Check-in at 0515, on schedule. Then at around 0600 something happened. The column stopped transmitting. Not a static burst, not a garbled message. Silence, complete radio blackout. Soviet high command assumed mechanical failure. These things happened. A tank breaks down, the column halts while mechanics work. Radio antenna damaged, give it time, but minutes turned into hours. By mid-morning, worry had crystallized into something harder: dread. Where was the column? Reconnaissance flights found nothing. Ground scouts reported no wreckage, no ambush sites, no sign of combat. It was as if the earth had opened and swallowed them whole. 40 to 60 Soviet tanks, hundreds of men, vanished. The official Soviet explanation, when it finally came, was almost laughable. The column had taken a wrong turn, got lost, ended up in a different sector. They'd rejoin the main force within hours. Nothing to worry about. Except they never did rejoin, and here's the detail that historians keep in their back pocket, the one that changes everything. Czech border guards, still operational despite the chaos, reported something peculiar. They'd seen a column of Soviet vehicles crossing into Silesia, into Polish territory. The tanks weren't lost in Czechoslovakia. They'd somehow crossed the border into Poland. Now Poland was also part of the invasion, but this particular column hadn't been ordered into Polish territory. The routing was explicit: stay in Czechoslovakia, secure the southeast. Those were the orders, so why had they crossed? Had the commander panicked? Had communications collapsed so badly that the unit didn't know where it was, didn't know which country it occupied? The Polish military, when contacted, was equally baffled. Yes, they'd seen the column. Yes, it had crossed the border. No, they didn't have authorization to engage it. The whole apparatus of command, Soviet, Polish, Czech, seemed to shrug simultaneously. A phantom unit operating in a phantom space, not where it was supposed to be, not communicating, not following orders. Declassified Soviet records, documents that surfaced years later after the Cold War had thawed, reveal that Moscow eventually located the column. It had indeed gotten lost. Navigation systems failed. Radio equipment malfunctioned. The commander, disoriented, had made a command decision, pressed toward what he thought was the objective. He'd crossed into Poland by accident. When the error was discovered, the column was simply rerouted, quietly, no fanfare. But here's what makes this genuinely eerie. For roughly 8 hours, a Soviet mechanized column operating in Eastern Europe during one of the Cold War's most dangerous moments was completely unaccounted for. No one knew where it was. No one knew what it was doing. The entire command structure, from Moscow to Prague to Warsaw, experienced a complete intelligence blackout. In any other context, a lost military unit is just bureaucratic incompetence. But in August 1968, with nuclear powers on hair-trigger alert, with thousands of tanks rolling across borders, with Prague citizens being shot in the streets, that phantom column represented something darker: the fragility of command and control during crisis. If this unit could vanish, what else might be unaccounted for? Soviet officials never publicized the incident. It wasn't part of their official narrative of the invasion. The column eventually rejoined operations, completed its assignments, and the whole thing was filed away. But Czech and Polish observers had documented it. Western intelligence agencies caught wind of the anomaly, and it became one of those Cold War footnotes, small, strange, and deeply unsettling. What the phantom tank column really exposed wasn't Soviet military incompetence, though that was certainly part of it. It was the reality that even the most carefully orchestrated invasion, even one involving hundreds of thousands of troops, could come apart in minutes. Communications could fail. Navigation systems could malfunction. Orders could be misunderstood. And in that gap between intention and execution, whole units could simply cease to exist. At least temporarily. The Prague Spring was crushed, the invasion succeeded, Dubček was removed, Soviet control was reasserted. But somewhere in the fog of those first hours, a Soviet tank commander, lost and disoriented, made decisions that no one in Moscow had authorized. He operated in a blind spot. He existed outside the system for just long enough to matter. The Phantom tank column was never a threat to the operation's success, but it was a threat to something equally important, the illusion of total control. It proved that even superpowers, even with the best intelligence agencies and military hierarchies, can lose track of their own assets. They can lose them for hours, and in a nuclear-armed world, hours can mean everything. This document right here, a declassified Soviet intelligence summary, mentions the incident only in passing. A footnote, column temporarily lost communications, position later re-established. That's all. No apology, no explanation. Just a single sentence acknowledging that for one morning in 1968, the machinery of Soviet military command broke down, and nobody could find the pieces until it was too late to matter. The tanks were found, the column regrouped, the invasion continued, history moved on. But for 8 hours, a phantom force had haunted the Eastern Bloc, a ghost unit proving that even the most rigid, centralized military apparatus could fail at the moment of its greatest ambition. And that failure, small as it was, remained classified for decades. Subscribe. Every week we uncover the Cold War's strangest near misses, the moments when everything almost fell apart.